Hey guys, Ramsey here from Jello. In this video, we're going to be going over the 7 Web3 marketing mistakes that you need to stop making going into 2025. And if you're wondering why you should be listening to me, I run a Web3 marketing agency. We've done work for the likes of Solana, ICP, Supra, and many others. These mistakes are some that we see all the time in the space and some that we've made ourselves in our early days. They're really easy to fix. And if you don't fix them, they do, uh, you know, have a lingering effect and a tangible effect on the outcome of your marketing. So, getting straight into it, the first big mistake that a lot of projects make is not QAing their early community. As you may know, community is a very big part of Web3 marketing, and actually, globally, web community is becoming a very hot part of the marketing funnel. And the reason is because when you can align people around a certain product and really get them emotionally invested, they're more likely to be a part of your marketing engine than not. And in Web3, it's twofold because there's brand attachment and a love for a product, and there's also economic alignment through tokens. So a lot of the end goals of Web3 marketing are to get a strong community that can really be there to support you and act as your kind of, I guess, BD team in a sense. Web3 thrives on the active and engaged communities that are obviously aligned economically and I guess culturally, they become an extension of your brand and your product. So, in the early days of your product, you see a lot of people just doing these Zeely campaigns and Galaxy campaigns just to attract people in, or a lot of these social engagement campaigns, no affiliation to any other products, but doing social engagement campaigns on these platforms and questification platforms to just get people in to show, social validation. The problem is, a lot of the time, these people are not really aligned with what you're really doing. They're not really people who are feeling the problem that you're solving, and they're usually just here for a quick buck. So it's really important that in the very early days of community, you really vet the people and you invite the people who you think represent your ideal community member and ideal customer into that community and build relationships with them. Be selective, right? Don't be afraid to have slow early community growth. Again, if you're looking to just drop a token and to everyone and anyone, then be my guest. But if you're looking to build a product for the long term, you need to make sure that your community is really aligned and full of people who you want to be representing the brand. Set rigid foundations and ensure they're aligned, and make sure that the people you are bringing in early days are carrying the right ideals so they can build that initial community and show people what you guys are really about. Now, there are some, I guess, quote unquote strategies that you can employ. Obviously, be strict with shilling. You don't want people just shilling in your chats and fudding the chats. For those of you who don't know the term fudding, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt, just basically putting a lot of fake news into the chats. You really want to be strict with how much people are promoting and keeping the quality of the engagements and interactions high. Set values and set your boundaries. Don't be afraid to deal with bad actors. Kick them out. Should make an example of them. If they're going to be toxic to your community, it's better to get them out and deal with them earlier than later. And finally, conduct events that are and experiences that are actually for your ideal community persona. So everyone does events, right? Digitally, you have AMAs, contests, whatever have you, and in real life, you go to conferences and you go to meetups, etc. Now, the key thing here is that when you're trying to build early community and you're trying to keep the quality and the demographics in a certain direction, you need to take a little bit of extra care in curating these events and experiences. Curating them in a way that is probably more aligned with the people who you want to be in the community is the exercise that you should conduct, right? Just take a little bit extra time to think about, okay, who do we really want? How do they behave? Where do they kind of congregate? What do they like? Etc., etc. And this way, you might not have the biggest turnout, but you'll have people who really want to be there. And that's the main thing. So yeah, first one is not QAing your community. Make sure you QA your community, get the early adopters aligned and make sure they're setting the right precedent for the community going forward. Now, the second one is a roadmap misalignment. So obviously, Web3 is built on greed at the moment. I'm not going to get too much into the philosophical side of it. But essentially, we're all fighting for attention. And when that is the case, sometimes people overpromise and underdeliver on their roadmap, or maybe put things out there that might not be really reasonable for like the short, medium term in an attempt to really excite people. Now, doing this and creating this kind of extended promise creates really high expectations, and usually a lot of fail to deliver on these, and it damages your credibility and it damages your reputation. So there's two things we can do here. The first is avoid setting unrealistic expectations, and really just be transparent about the project's timelines and milestones, right? Don't need to be sitting there saying that we're going to solve X, Y, Z in the next 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. The people who care about the problem will stick around with you and watch your journey, and obviously you should keep them incentivized and active, through other means. But we don't need to go and promise the world and deliver nothing, because that's how you lose everyone, right? It's better to be a slow burning project than to, blaze into a firework and then explode and then have nothing, right? Because that's what happens when you overpromise on your product and your timelines. So yeah, avoid setting unrealistic expectations. Don't make extreme promises that you can't fulfill, and just be transparent. If things are delayed, tell the community, hey, the product rollout is going to be next month because XYZ expenses, engineers are, working hard, the bandwidth is low at the moment, whatever, is the truth. There's nothing wrong in saying it, right? And the people who are really aligned with the product, they'll understand. And the people who aren't really aligned and are really here for a quick buck will, be sifted and filtered out. So, stop setting unrealistic expectations. Be true to yourself, be true to your community, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be representing you and going to be really backing you in your corner in the long term. The third thing is jumping on a narrative, right? So this is a very interesting thing, right? So everyone knows that narratives are king in Web3, in tech, obviously a lot of other places as well. But especially when there's a finite amount of attention, and everyone is kind of pulling from the same pot of users, because that's what it is at the moment, your narrative and the brand story is going to be extremely key in attracting attention and retaining attention, right? Building up your corner of mindshare of the space, right? That being said, there are two types of narratives, right? We have brand narratives and we have market narratives. Now, brand narratives are imperative. You need to have your brand narrative, right? And it should be something unique to your brand, unique to your product, unique to your mission, your values, the problem you're solving, etc. Now, the narratives that we're talking about here are market narratives. For example, the meme coin narrative, there was a narrative around DeepIn and AI, and all these other kind of broad stroke, areas where people think, oh, okay, maybe money will flow to this sector or that sector, right? What we don't want to be doing is aligning ourselves too much with that specific market narrative. And the reason being is that if your whole narrative is that you are, for example, a DeepIn project, and there's nothing much about you other than that, or you don't communicate that, then when that narrative becomes boring for the fickle market, then you will also, by association, become boring. Now, if you define your own lane through your own brand narrative and just say, okay, we are a DeepIn project, cool, but we have this own narrative for ourselves, then it allows you to be a bit more robust in how you maintain attention, right? It's not going to be as volatile. And obviously that's assuming that you're doing all the right things as well, making sure that your community is engaged, you're being truthful and honest, you're doing other marketing. But I think the main point is, if you align yourself too closely with a wider market narrative and the narrative becomes boring and you don't have any brand narrative to back it up, then, you will essentially be left in the dust. Now, obviously to overcome this, you should build your own brand narrative. So how do you do that? And there's three things you need to understand, right? It's audience, product, and then the wider market and solutions, like, other competitors in the solution sphere that you sit in. Understanding these three things is really important to getting your narrative and your positioning, right? So, really do a deep dive of your audience, understand everything you can about them, what their pains are, what their behaviors are, what their desires are. If you want to go into psychographics and demographics for different audience segments, you can also do that. And then also map out your product, holistically, map out your product in a, very straightforward way, right? Just look at it internally. What does this product, what's the capabilities, what are the features, what are the benefits, right? Outline all of these things. And then you can put it up against your competitors, right? And then you can find, okay, this is our unique edge. This is where we can be different. And then we can formulate this into a narrative. Now, there's two ways you can do things when it comes to like your narrative. You can either go and try own a category and be the best in a category, or you can make your own lane and define your own category. Now, obviously, going into an existing category is easier to get mindshare from initially, but obviously there's more competition, so you have more to compete with. When you craft your own lane, you generally have to educate the market on something new, which can be a bit tough, but it means that any attention that you have, you own all of it because it's your own kind of category. So that's a couple of things to keep in mind. But that's how we overcome this issue of, jumping onto market narratives and just kind of being another chain abstraction protocol or deepen protocol, right? We need to figure out a deeper underlying narrative for the product and the brand. And this leads on to the fourth one, confusing messaging, right? It's very simple. Your messaging should be simple and should be clear, right? Web3 products, for the most part, don't conduct a cohesive messaging strategy, and they give a lot of mixed signals, and it's very convoluting, and you talk about one thing here and another thing there, and different channels talk about different things, right? Everything should be clear, cut, and concise. We should be doing cohesive messaging across the board to really hammer it home. And again, this comes down to understanding your audience and your product, identifying your brand voice and your key messaging from these. Obviously, your brand voice comes from doing a bit of branding work, but your key messaging should also come from a mix of your branding work and then your audience and product work, like segmentation and research. And then, you can test and iterate, right? If, let's say, you've come up with 3 different types of messaging, or many variations, different wording, different pain points that you're hitting, different ways of explaining the product, just test them with the market, put it out there. How do people react? How does the community react? What traction does it get? I think Nillian is a great example of this, right? They were doing privacy from day one. And, in the last year, I believe, in 2024, they changed their messaging to the blind computer. And now, they managed to raise some extra funding, and people are very, very receptive to that. And it really portrays their product in a much clearer way. So, don't make the messaging confusing. Simple, clear communication is key, and don't be afraid to test and iterate if things are not as you see fit, right? No one's expecting you to have it done on the first try, and it's very hard to get it done on the first try. Now, again, test your messaging not only with a technical audience, but also a non-technical audience, right? At the end of the day, when tokens are involved, non-technical people need to understand what is going on under the hood. And your messaging is a key part of that, right? You should use simple language that highlights your product and how it solves like real world problems. Obviously, provide other technical, detailed content for more technical people, and talk to the community, talk to your users, help them understand from them how they feel about the way you're positioning the product. Again, this is when community is key. If you've got a strong community who are aligned with you and they believe in you, you can ask them these questions without any without feeling vulnerable, and they can help you iterate on this stuff and progress forward. So again, confusing messaging, something that you can really fix pretty easily, but if you don't, it's going to cause you a lot of pain and a lot of hassle and potentially months or years of setback on your roadmap. Now, number 5 is neglecting events and community activation. And I think this comes back to how community is being built nowadays, right? A lot of people just getting themselves into Discord servers because of a questification campaign and a monetary incentive, and just becomes like people just asking when is a token launch, right? At the end of the day, people trust people. In Web3, personal connections are more effective than a faceless brand, and you need to be activating your community in a way where whereby they are feeling valued in their environment, right? Now, obviously, the end goal for marketing is where your community evangelizes the product. And the way that they can do that is by feeling that they get good experiences from the brand. Now, the way that you can do that is to facilitate a couple of things. Obviously, one is curated events for the community. And the second thing is to ensure that there is sufficient value creation and knowledge sharing between community members, right? What we need to really do is end up creating many-to-many interactions. Now, this is really key. A lot of communities in the crypto sphere are one brand talking to all the different users, all the different community members, right? It's more like someone standing on the stage and giving an announcement, and then the community waiting to hear back, right? And this usually happens when the community is more economically aligned than culturally aligned, and so that's another thing, right? People just like when token or when TG or whatever it might be. That's normally what the dynamic looks like, right? You have the brand just speaking to everyone individually. It's a one-to-many interaction. That's not a community. What a community is many-to-many interactions. So everyone or people within the community should have many relationships with other people in the community. And obviously the Ethereum community is OG. They've done that very well. Solana community is extremely good at that. Honestly, probably the best at that. And there's a lot to learn from their super team and Solana Foundation on this, which I think I have another video on, which I'll probably just link in the description if you want to have a look at that. But they've done it perfectly, or the best so far at the moment. And again, they're basically cultivating these many-to-many interactions whereby there's collaboration between like-minded people in the community. There's knowledge sharing. There's like inter-community value creation. That helps you scale the community, right? Because that's how community scales. You don't scale by just talking to more people. You scale by getting more people to have good experiences within the community. And then they can be like, oh, I met this guy at the event. Oh, whose event? XYZ's event, right? Your brand's event. And that's already a positive experience for that person in the community. So not to waffle too much, but there's a lot of things you can do. Host community events, standard, obviously make them tailored to your audience and your ideal community members. Provide a space for them to interact, to engage with each other. Hackathons are great. For example, if you said, hey, hackathon coming up, but you have to team up with someone in our community. For example, you get people to work together, to talk, to understand each other and collaborate. Another way is to also collaborate between other like-minded communities, right? If you're building a DEX, for example, and you can also go and collaborate with other DEXs and their communities. Obviously, it's a crossover in the audience. There could be like a lot of interesting things that they can talk about, like trading strategies and whatnot. Like these things are really good for providing good experiences and activating the community. And again, we want to allow for inter-community value creation and knowledge sharing, right? This is the key. So that's number 5. Don't neglect community events and don't forget to activate your community properly. Now, the 6th thing is something that we see all the time, right? Neglecting your token. Your token is a product. This has to be hammered home, right? Your token is not just a thing that you launch and then it's out there and you just leave it, right? It's a product. Ideally, your token has, ideally, your token fits into some token economy. It should be it should improve the experience with your product, right? You should get more utility from your product with the token, ideally, right? And this could be in the form of staking, which is like kind of low level. Governance is also something, but it should have a real role in the product. If it doesn't, don't launch a token, right? But it's a product in itself. And the reason why is because normally tokens have their own sub-community, their investors, who care about the token, the people who are using the token in the product, so people using it for utility. And obviously this means that it has its own expectations and it should have its own marketing budget as well, right? So if you're going to launch a token, make sure that you actually need to have the token first. Don't launch for the sake of launching one. It can cause a lot of problems down the line if you kind of sell it to the wrong people or market it to the wrong people. And if you don't market it after the launch, you have a very hard, very hard hill to climb up, right? Make sure that if you're going to launch a token, it makes sense to have it within the product. It fits with the product. There's a real token economy behind it versus just some very minimalistic token implementation. Make sure you have the funds to market it within general communications or in product marketing, and that you are able to engage the community as well. Right? Again, it's a product in itself, has its own expectations. It'll have its own messaging and communications strategy, I guess, and it will have its own budgets too for marketing. So very important thing, don't neglect your token, right? And finally, set OKRs and track your progress. Tracking your marketing performance is extremely important, right? On Twitter, on your Google Analytics, whatever other channels you're using, on chain, depending what product you have, etc. But you should be looking at the data, right? What is working? What is not working? What's resonating? What's getting the most engagement, the most likes, the most comments? What's driving the most volume on chain if we do a specific campaign or if you're running ads? All these things are important, right? We need to make sure that we're looking at these things. Regularly track the data, see what's working, adjust strategies as needed, run A/B tests, especially when you're looking at KOLs. Are these KOLs actually driving like real numbers for you on social? Are they improving the quality of your community? And obviously there is a hardship in deriving how much value they provide on chain, but we can always see over a longer period of time if the engagement with these in campaigns and KOLs and such have a good effect on the on-chain side as well. So set your OKRs, set your goals. All right, we want to hit X amount of followers, or we want to hit X TVL, or experience X growth in developers on the network, whatever it might be. Find those like North Star metrics, those metrics you want to track, the things that you want to be really setting your milestones on, and try optimize for those metrics as well using all the other data you can get. If you're not tracking your progress, it's very hard to know what's working and what's not working. There's some very good tools out there. For Twitter, I can recommend Typefully, as we use that in-house. Again, no affiliation, but we use that to manage our accounts. And there's a lot of other good tools out there for social listening and understanding sentiment, etc. But again, if you do not set these OKRs, objective key results, we're not going to understand how close we're getting to our goal. That's obviously the most important thing. So those were the 7 biggest mistakes that people are making at the moment that we've seen. And these are things that you can correct very, very easily. If you don't, then they do have lingering effects. But again, these are things that you can change very fast to really make sure that your marketing is efficient, effective, and in line with your goals, right? So I hope this video was valuable. There's a lot of other things that you can do to improve your marketing, but these things are really important to hash over in the short, medium, and long term. So if you derive value from this video and you thought it was valuable, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe. And I'll drop some resources in the description, namely around audience segmentation, product mapping, and I'll drop that Solana video as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, stay tuned for some more Web3 marketing content.